You know, for over 1,000 years, Imperial China ran one of the most ambitious social experiments in all of history, the Imperial examination system. The whole idea was to find the absolute brightest minds to run the country, no matter where they came from, a system of pure merit. But was it, really?
I mean, that was the incredible promise, right? The idea that anyone, with enough brainpower and hard work, could climb their way up from a tiny village to the actual halls of power. It was the ultimate dream of social mobility.
And if you looked at the official records, this was the guiding principle. The system's own documents basically shouted from the rooftops that it was totally equal, that your family status meant absolutely nothing, only your talent mattered.
But then you have people who are actually there, like the scholar Gong Zizhen, who saw something completely different. He complained that the system really only seemed to cement the power of the families who were already on top. So, what was the truth? Was it a ladder for the poor, or was it a fortress for the rich?
To figure that out, we first have to get our heads around the sheer scale of this legendary test, because this was not your average one-and-done exam, not even close. The whole thing was a marathon, not a sprint. It was this multi-stage journey that could literally take up a scholar's entire life. You'd start at the local county level, and if you passed, and were incredibly lucky, you might, decades later, find yourself taking the final exam right in front of the emperor himself.
And with every step you climbed up that ladder, you earned a more prestigious title. Passing the provincial exam, for example, made you a recommended man or a juren. But the real prize, the golden ticket to a top government job, was becoming an advanced scholar at Jinshi after acing that final palace exam.
Now, to make this whole ladder of success actually about merit, the dynasties, especially later on in the Song and Qing, went to some pretty extraordinary lengths to try and make the process as objective and fair as possible.
I mean, just get a load of these measures. They concealed the candidates' names. They had clerks painstakingly recopy every single essay so that no one could recognize the handwriting. The entire exam area was sealed shut for days, locking everyone inside. And examiners were even banned from overseeing exams in their own home regions, just to prevent any hint of favoritism.
So on paper, it looks like maybe the most impartial system you could possibly imagine. But what happens when we stop looking at the rules and start looking at the actual results? Well, that's where things get really interesting. A groundbreaking study dug into over 10,000 examination records from the mid-Qing dynasty, and what it found tells a completely different story. A story defined by 3 hidden barriers to success. All right, barrier number 1, and it's a big one, the class barrier. Turns out, despite all those anonymous essays, if you were the child of an existing elite, you had a huge, built-in advantage. And the data here is just stark. The sons of officials' families were nearly 3 times more likely to pass than boys from commoner families. That whole ideal of background doesn't matter, it starts to fall apart right here. So what's behind this massive gap? Well, it really came down to resources, what sociologists today would call cultural capital. An official's family, on average, owned over 8 times more books than a commoner's family. They could afford private tutors and get into the best academies. They created this whole educational ecosystem that raw talent, all on its own, could almost never beat.
But the advantages didn't just stop with your family's resources. It also mattered, a lot, where you were born. And that brings us to the second hidden barrier, geography.
Success was just shockingly concentrated. These 2 wealthy southern provinces, Zhejiang and Zhejiang, had only about 18% of the country's population, but they produced almost half of all the successful scholars. These areas were the epicenters of wealth, of great schools, of book printing, basically of everything you needed to succeed. To put a hard number on it, the Gini coefficient for this geographic distribution was 0.76. Now for some context, a Gini of 0 is perfect equality, and 1 is total inequality. So 0.76, that signifies an extreme concentration of opportunity. It was actually more unequal than the distribution of land itself.
And finally, we come to the third barrier, and this one was all about who you knew. It turns out powerful academic factions, kind of like different schools of thought, created these networks that could literally make or break a scholar's career.
Just look at the difference in these success rates. If you belong to a powerful group like the Tongcheng School, your chances of passing more than doubled compared to a scholar who had no connections. These factions controlled key teaching jobs and basically had a monopoly on interpreting the classic texts in the way they knew the examiners wanted to see. And if you zoom in on the most powerful faction of all, the numbers just get insane.
a student from the Tongcheng school was over 5 times more likely to succeed than an independent scholar trying to go it alone. This wasn't just a slight hedge, it was practically a monopoly on success.
So what does this all mean when you put it together? The Imperial exam wasn't a simple lie, but it wasn't the simple truth either. It was a paradox. And it's one that has some seriously strong echoes in how we talk about meritocracy today.
The system was really playing a dual role. On the surface, yes, it did provide a real, even if it was very narrow, path for people to move up in society. That slim chance kept the dream alive for everyone. But underneath, it was also a powerful tool for something else entirely.
It was a tool for what's known as elite reproduction. And that's exactly what it sounds like. It's the process where the advantaged class uses all its resources, its money, its location, its connections, to make sure its own kids stay at the top, generation after generation. The exam system, despite all its safety measures, became the perfect engine for this.
And the key lesson from the whole study is this: real fairness isn't just about creating an open competition and saying go for it. It's about actually tackling the hidden monopolies on the resources people need to even compete in the first place, whether that's books, good schools, or powerful networks.
And all this leaves us with a pretty provocative question for our own time. When we praise a system as a pure meritocracy, are we celebrating true equality of opportunity? Or are we, maybe without realizing it, just defending the advantages of the people who are already set up to win?